Welcome back, my wonderful listeners. Every time I sit down to prepare a lesson, my sole goal is to deliver maximum value, maximum benefit, and maximum clarity. I want to make your language journey shorter, smarter, and endlessly more engaging. Today, we'll dive deeper into this topic. I've prepared a powerful, captivating story that reveals a revolutionary method for learning foreign languages, a method that completely ignores tedious grammar rules and flashcards. This incredible success story proves that the traditional path is often slow. Ready to completely rethink your approach to learning English? Let's get started. And before we begin, hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss any of these revolutionary language tricks. Imagine spending decades believing your brain is too old for a new language. You're stuck with flashcards that fail and grammar books that gather dust, convinced that real fluency is only for the young. Now, meet Stephen Kaufman, the 80-year-old hyperpolyglot who speaks 20 languages and proves that the biggest barrier to fluency isn't age. It's your method. We're not just learning English today. We're unlocking the neuroplasticity secrets that allowed him to master Mandarin after 60. Get ready to discover the contextual bomb and the 50% rule that will change your English learning journey forever. If you want to achieve true English fluency and finally debunk the aging myth, subscribe now. And let's decode Stephen Kaufman's brain secrets. Who is Stephen Kaufman and why he matters? In a world obsessed with quick results and youth, it's hard to find truly inspiring learning stories. We are constantly bombarded with advice from experts who succeeded in their 20s, but forget about ordinary people. Today, we uncover the story of a man who turned all these notions upside down. For millions of people around the world, he has become a living symbol of the unlimited possibilities of the human mind. Who is he? Stephen Kaufman is not an academic or a linguistic scholar. He is a former Canadian diplomat who worked successfully in international trade. And most importantly, he is one of the world's most famous hyperpolyglots. But it's not the number of languages that makes him a phenomenon, even though he fluently speaks 20 languages in his 80s. His phenomenon lies in when he began his main linguistic journey. It didn't happen in childhood, when the brain is believed to be most flexible. Stephen Kaufman began his active, massive language learning after retiring. At a time when most people believe their learning days are behind them, he made language learning his mission. He doesn't just learn languages, he deciphers them, creating a unique method based on his own experience that any adult can use. That's why his story matters to you. Whether you are learning English from scratch or aiming to master a third or fourth language, Stephen Kaufman offers us radical hope. Your age is not a barrier, but an advantage. Filled with life experience and cognitive maturity, his life is a direct challenge to the myth of the aging brain. He is living proof that the brain has unlimited neuroplasticity and that you can achieve English fluency or any other language if you choose the right approach. In this video, we will explore his personal journey and, most importantly, his innovative methodology that completely eliminates tedious grammar memorization and flashcards. Ready to shatter myths and change your approach to language learning forever? 2. The myth of the aging brain and the Kaufman Paradox. Have you ever felt like it's too late to learn a new language? Perhaps it feels as if your brain is simply too old to absorb new vocabulary and grammatical structures. This is a very common feeling. and it's one that has been reinforced in society by decades of misconceptions about how our brains actually work. Many people truly believe that after the age of 30 or 40, our brain begins to harden, losing flexibility and its capacity to easily form new neural connections. We are told that children are sponges that effortlessly soak up languages, while adults are dried-up sponges that can no longer absorb anything. This myth creates immense social pressure and sparks personal fears that prevent thousands of adults from even attempting to pursue their language goals. But what if I told you this is all a deeply ingrained fallacy? Imagine a person who doesn't just disprove this notion, but mocks it, proving that language learning can be better at 80 than it ever was at 20. Allow me to introduce you to Stephen Kaufman. Stephen Kaufman is no ordinary retiree. He's a former Canadian diplomat and successful businessman who transformed his retirement years into an epic linguistic journey. His story didn't begin in childhood, as you might expect, but after the age of 60, when most people believe their best learning years are firmly behind them. His first late-life language was Mandarin Chinese, which he started in his 60s, at a time when everyone was convinced that Chinese is too complex for adults. Instead of rote exams and flashcards, he simply read and listened to content that interested him. Following Chinese, he quickly moved on to Japanese and Korean, spending anywhere from a few months to a year on each new language to reach conversational fluency, not decades. Today, in his 80s, Stephen Kaufman is a true hyperpolyglot, fluently commanding 20 languages, including complex ones like Russian, Arabic, Farsi, and Turkish. This is not just impressive. It shatters every single stereotype. How exactly does he do it? He doesn't sit down with dictionaries, copying out words, and he certainly doesn't drill grammar. His method is completely opposite. He immerses himself in engaging content. Imagine him spending hours listening to podcasts or audiobooks in his target language while simultaneously reading the text. He allows words and grammar to percolate and settle into his brain naturally through constant recurrence in varied contexts. He is not afraid of forgetting a language. To maintain his knowledge, Stephen constantly rotates the languages he studies. One month he might work intensely on Portuguese, and the next he might switch to Greek. He believes that the languages you learn never entirely disappear. They merely sleep, and they can be woken up with just a few weeks of active immersion. Science has long confirmed what Stephen demonstrates in practice. Our brain possesses remarkable cognitive resilience and the capacity for neurogenesis, the formation of new nerve cells throughout our entire lives. We know about cognitive reserve, which means the more you use your brain, the more backup paths it creates, making it more resistant to age-related changes. That's why activities like learning languages are one of the best ways to maintain mental sharpness. This is the Kaufman Paradox. He gets better and better at language acquisition the older he gets. He doesn't just hold on, he thrives, mastering new languages faster and more effectively than many younger students. Stephen Kaufman is living proof that age is just a number when it comes to your capacity for learning. The critical question: if he avoids flashcards, and he doesn't start with 100% known vocabulary, how does he stop the new language from sounding like an unintelligible noise? This is where his radical method begins. 3. The pillars of Kaufman's method: immersion and autonomy. You asked the key question: how do you decode a new language without knowing the words? The answer lies in the two interconnected pillars of Kaufman's method: Massive input immersion and autonomous learning. Pillar 1. Massive input immersion. The 50% rule. Kaufman rejects the textbook model, which treats English as a set of rules to be mastered. Instead, he treats English as a massive ocean of content that he wants to swim in. His goal is exposure, constant, unrelenting exposure to the language. This is based on the theory of comprehensible input, which means consuming content that is mostly understandable. Kaufman's radical adjustment is his 50% rule. He's happy to start reading or listening to material where he understands only about 50% of the words at first. Why 50%? Because a text that is 95% understood is too boring, and a text that is 10% understood is indeed just noise. The 50% zone is the sweet spot. It's challenging enough to engage your curiosity, but familiar enough for your brain to start making guesses and inferences based on the surrounding context. How does he handle the unknown words without flashcards? This is the key trick. When Kaufman encounters an English word he doesn't know, he looks it up once for a quick definition and then moves on immediately. He relies on frequency and recurrence. He trusts that if the word is important, he will encounter it again and again and again in different English podcasts, books, and articles. It's the iterative exposure, repeated exposure in varied contexts that cements the word, not the single act of memorizing a flashcard. Imagine the word ubiquitous. In Kaufman's system, he first sees it in a tech article. He sees it again a day later in an English podcast about marketing. The word becomes organic, tied not to a translation, but to a multi-contextual scenario. This is why his retention is so high. He doesn't study grammar. He allows grammar to percolate, slowly filter through him. He reads and listens so much that the grammatical patterns, the tenses, the prepositions, the word order, simply osmose, gradually absorb into his language intuition. Pillar 2. Autonomous learning, the power of self-directed efficacy. The second pillar is autonomy, self-directed learning. Kaufman believes that for the adult brain to truly engage, the learning process must be intrinsically motivating. You must love what you are doing. This means eschewing, deliberately avoiding any material that bores you. If an English textbook is dull, he drops it. If a news report is too dry, he skips it for something more engaging, like a thriller novel or a discussion on a topic he cares about. This self-directed approach is paramount because it removes the greatest inhibitor to adult learning: pressure and obligation. When you choose your own path and your own content, the English acquisition stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like an adventure. This freedom fosters a sense of efficacy, the belief in one's own ability, which is the key psychological driver for language learning longevity. 4. Tools and techniques, the LingQ ecosystem, and the power of context. How does he put the philosophy of immersion and autonomy into daily, repeatable action? He realized early on that traditional software forces you to use pre-selected, often boring content. So he created LingQ, a platform designed to perfectly execute his methodology. The LingQ ecosystem, turning chaos into comprehension. LingQ's main power is that it allows you to import virtually any English content that interests you: articles, news, blog posts, or even podcast transcripts. This instantly transforms it into a language lesson, solving the motivation problem instantly. When Kaufman opens a new imported text, the software automatically highlights new words, called links, in a specific color. When he encounters a new word, he clicks it once. The system provides a quick definition and adds it to his personal database. This is his only form of note-taking. He doesn't spend 5 minutes trying to memorize it. He relies on the system to track the word's recurrence and the fact that he will inevitably encounter it again, a few hours or a few days later, in a completely different article. You stop seeing a word as a single entity you must master, and start seeing it as a casual acquaintance you must meet often. The Contextual Bomb: Why Single Word Cards Fail. Kaufman understands that a single word on a flashcard is linguistic starvation. It lacks context, emotion, and life. His system, conversely, leverages the contextual bomb. One English word, encountered 20 times in 20 different sentences, is vastly more powerful than that same word drilled 20 times in isolation. Consider the simple, common verb to strike. On a flashcard, you might learn one definition: to hit. But in Kaufman's Immersion, he first encounters it in a political article. The workers struck for better wages. Later, he sees it in a nature documentary. The lightning struck the old oak tree. Then in a novel, the idea suddenly struck me. By the time he has seen the word strike 15 times, his brain has organically mapped its semantic range, all without ever memorizing a conjugational table. Grammar, servant, not master. Kaufman has been notoriously quoted as saying he ignores grammar at the start. He simply refuses to let grammar be his master. He sees grammar as the organic structure that eventually reveals itself through massive reading. His method can be described as grammar by osmosis. Imagine trying to understand how a car works by reading the complex, technical blueprint first. It's overwhelming. Kaufman starts by driving the car, consuming content. After hundreds of hours of driving, he can then look at the blueprint and say, aha, that's why the engine is connected to the wheels. He approaches grammar in 2 stages: passive acquisition, total focus on input, allowing the brain to unconsciously absorb patterns, and targeted review. Only when a pattern is still murky does he briefly consult a reference. The speaking component also follows this input-heavy philosophy. Speaking is the product of immersion, not the cause of fluency. 5. The lesson for everyone: trusting the process and the joy of discovery. We've explored Kaufman's incredible journey and his radical methods, but his greatest lesson is a philosophical stance towards learning itself. Trusting the process and the cumulative effect. Kaufman preaches trusting the process. This demands immense patience, but it grants huge freedom. He understands that the brain operates on a cumulative effect. The first 50 hours of immersion might feel like wasted effort, but when you hit the 150-hour mark, the brain suddenly clicks, and all those tiny pieces of knowledge you've been collecting suddenly coalesce. This feeling is akin to crossing a fluency threshold. Every article read, every podcast listened to, it's not a test. It's an accumulation of treasures within your mind. Language as an infinite journey, Stephen Kaufman has freed himself from the tyranny of perfection. This is the most important lesson for any adult learner. Many of us fear speaking English because we fear making mistakes. Kaufman embraces mistakes as an inherent part of the process. He views language as an infinite journey, where the goal isn't a finish line, but the sheer joy of communication. This is a deeply intrinsic motivation. He learns because he is curious about how people of another culture think. This joy of discovery is the fuel that allows him to continue learning into his 80s. The key lesson for brain longevity: language learning isn't just about communication. It's about longevity. Every new link you learn, every new grammatical pattern you recognize, is an exercise for your cognitive function. Stephen Kaufman shows that the most effective way to keep your brain young, flexible, and vibrant is to constantly feed it with new, challenging, yet engaging content. Your brain, just like his, has unlimited potential for neuroplasticity. Age is an advantage, as your rich life experience makes context even deeper and more meaningful. You don't have to be a hyperpolyglot. You just need to trust the process. Find content you love and let the language seep in. Do as Stephen does. Stop studying English as a chore and start living in English as an exciting new world. We've given you the roadmap to fluency. Now it's time to take action. The time for passive learning is over. You now hold the master key to rewiring your brain. Your mission today is simple. Find one English podcast or article about a topic you love and start reading, listening, using the 50% rule. Tell us the topic you chose in the comments below. Did you pick a podcast on ancient history or a blog about rock climbing? Let us know. If you are serious about achieving English fluency, you know what to do. Smash that subscribe button to ensure you never miss the next hyperlearning secret. Build your language. Build your future. See you in the next one.